Australian first study shows the tools used to identify autism are leaving women and girls behind. Researchers from Flinders University analysed the profiles of hundreds of autistic children and the tools used to detect autism and say the process prioritises the experience of men and boys. Now, Katie Coulis is the CEO of Yellow Ladybugs, an advocacy organisation she set up when her daughter got an autism diagnosis. And Katie joins us now. Morning, Katie. Thanks for your time.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
What the gender divide fascinates me here, and I must admit I was naive in this space. What's your understanding on the situation with autistic girls and women and why they're being identified later? Why are they different and why is the diagnosis different to that of men?
Oh, look, it's honestly, the research is catching up to what we've been sharing for so many years. I think 8 years now when my daughter first got identified. I was like, why are girls slipping through the net? Well, there's many reasons. We're obviously generally socialised differently to males growing up. So already that puts us at a disadvantage because we've got different masking that we do as autistic girls and women. And so we often miss out on those subtle signs there. And so there's one of the reasons. Stereotypes, of course. Gosh, there's so many stereotypes in society on what autism looks like. The media portrayals, you only can think of Sheldon, etc. There needs to be greater understanding of the depth on how autism is for us in our community.
You mentioned masking there a minute ago, Katie, and how that's different for women and girls as opposed to males. So can you just explain that a bit more for me? What do you mean?
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of the time, I mean, it's seen across all genders, but mostly with autistic women and girls, is that we camouflage who we are to fit in. So there's a deeper social pressure to fit in with our peers. And so we take bits and pieces of the people we observe, and we might piece together what people expect us to be. And often that comes at a cost because we don't know who we are. We're sort of going through life masking, or we're hiding and internalizing our own hidden needs, and often we're not disruptive or outward in our display of distress, and so we mask. And we might, it's the typical story of an autistic girl at school who seems fine during the day, and teachers say she's a pleasure, she's fine, but it's like a Coke bottle effect of shaking up the anxiety, and they come home and it explodes in a meltdown or even a shutdown, and that cost is huge. It was really interesting, the segment you're talking about, eating disorders.
Yeah.
Often there's an intersection with autism and girls and eating disorders, and often we get to the teen years and we're presenting with self-harm or mental health or eating disorders, but what's really going on is years of camouflaging and masking who we are, and it comes at a cost with our mental health.
Yeah, bottling it up, as you say. Do you mind me asking, so I don't mean to intrude, but just because we're talking about issues with diagnosis and that sort of thing. How old was your daughter when she was first identified?
Oh, look, she was 6, but that was because I was lucky enough to find someone who, after many, many years trying to find answers, finding someone who understood the internalized autistic experience. In fact, I think 80% of girls and women don't get diagnosed until the age of 19, so it's quite late. But the stories I hear from our community, there are so many barriers that it is getting later and later. I've got some hope, though, that through our stories that we're sharing and through hearing from our community, we can bring that down and get people access to their own neurology, understanding who they are so they don't have to mask anymore. And
why is that important? Why is it important to find out earlier than, as you say, perhaps 19 years of age when you're an adult?
Exactly, because we've seen the cost of not knowing who you are, and the cost is really bad. We want people to understand that they're not broken. They're perfectly them to be themselves, to understand how to find tools to help cope with the stresses that they may be experiencing, and not to try and be a second-rate neurotypical person, but be the first-rate autistic person they're born to be. So we need them to find their peers, access to their neurokin and other autistic people, so that they can have Me Too moments and access to their culture like any other culture.
Yeah.
So we want that as early as possible to people to understand their brains, and then we'll see lower rates of mental health issues as the cost of masking drops.
What resources then can teachers and parents turn to? What tools would you recommend?
Oh gosh, that's a really good question. Please make sure, please make sure it's autistic led. We need
Well, that's important,
resources.
right? Sorry to interrupt, but has that been an
Absolutely.
issue in the past that these
Yes,
resources and the diagnostic tools
yes,
have not been autistic led?
exactly. We
Yeah.
have had for generations people talking about us that, they observe through their lens, but they're not living it authentically. So please make sure it's I mean, we've created a resource. We've pulled all the stories that we've been able to capture from autistic adults and teenagers and pulled it together into a book. A little self promo here, but it's something I wish I was given at the very start of my own journey, but also parenting my autistic daughters.
Mm.
But teachers, I wish I was able to give it to the school and say, here, please learn about the internalized. They're not fine. Just because they're not disrupting the classroom, it doesn't mean they're not entitled to the supports that they deserve. And that's what we're seeing the girls slipping through the net.
Yeah.
Because they're not disruptive.
As you say, that domino effect, that flow-on effect of bottling things up, in your words, over time can be harmful indeed. Look, I'm afraid we're out of time, Katie, but it's a real pleasure speaking with you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.